In my third year after being brought home, I jumped from the building. My soul floated in the air, wanting to see how my parents and brother, who had always disliked me, would weep and wail, full of regret. But my father merely shook his head indifferently, calling my corpse childish. My mother pursed her lips, relieved. My brother stood in front of the fake heiress, preventing her from seeing my gruesome death. But the fake heiress still cried in fright, prompting the whole family to rush over and comfort her. I was stunned for a long time, then smiled wryly in self-deprecation. When I opened my eyes again, I was back when I had just been brought home. 1. After realizing I had been reborn, I sat in silence for a long time. The parents in front of me spoke with red-rimmed eyes about their longing and guilt over the years. They had missed me for 10 years. In my previous life, I was so touched that I cried loudly and threw myself into their arms, naively believing that I had a home. That I was loved. However, 3 years later, I frantically tore at my hair and cried, jumping off the building in front of them, wanting to trade my death for a shred of their love. But no one ever loved me. So, at this moment, I felt nothing, as calm as a log. Good girl, aren't you still adjusting? It's okay, Mom will take you to choose a room first, choose whatever you like. My mother saw my silence, took my hand, and headed towards the 3rd floor. My father followed with a smile, while calling my brother, Justin, urging him to come home quickly. Justin only replied with one word, busy. My father was displeased, my mother was a little embarrassed, and explained to me, your brother is a very busy man, the group's affairs are basically left to him, he can only come back on weekends. In my previous life, I believed it. In this life, I didn't care, so I continued to believe it. Going up to the 3rd floor, every room was brightly decorated, full of warmth and girlishness. Dawn, choose whatever you like, you can live in any room, my father said with a smile. My eyes locked onto the room closest to the stairs. Inside, on the bed, sat a fluffy panda. In my previous life, I was immediately attracted to it, and mistakenly thought that my parents loved me very much, so I chose that room directly. I liked that panda. However, my parents' faces changed slightly, and after exchanging a glance, they quickly said with a smile, Dawn, I forgot to tell you, this room belongs to your sister, Penny. Penny is very sensible, she specifically emptied her room, saying to let you choose too, you should live in this most spacious one. I blinked at the time, feeling grateful, my sister gave her room to me? She's so nice. I still like that panda, and that room. My parents exchanged glances again, hesitating to speak. But I, overjoyed, had already run in and hugged the panda without hesitation. Just then, Penny came back with her school bag. 2. Penny was the same age as me, 15 years old. She was much more mature than me, not as ignorant and naive. Seeing me barge into her room, she pursed her lips and forced a smile, revealing dimples. I heard that my sister came home, so I took a leave of absence to rush back. Does my sister like this room? Then you can live here. After she finished speaking, she bit her lip and turned her face away. My parents took in all of her changes. My mother quickly came in and pulled me, Dawn, choose another room, this one is too big, I don't think it's good. Why isn't it good? I was puzzled. And subtly sensed the change in atmosphere. But how could I, at that time, understand what was wrong? My parents were shedding tears for me, loving me so much. Penny took the initiative to empty her room for me to choose. I was their own daughter, wasn't I? Was it wrong to choose a room I liked? So, I was full of questions. My mother's expression changed again, hesitating to speak. My father was much more stern, and also remained silent. Penny took the initiative to come over and make the bed for me. Sister, you can live here, this home originally belongs to you, you can live wherever you like. 3. I moved in. In the village, I only dealt with pots, pans, fields, and land. When I came to the city, I still only knew how to deal with pots, pans, fields, and land. But in the city, there were no pots, pans, fields, or land. So, I didn't understand what was wrong. I had only lived in Penny's room for half a day when I was dragged out by my brother, Justin, who had returned home. He was furious, dragging me, who was reading a book, to the door, and scolding me with hatred. Do you have any manners? This is Penny's room, you're a cuckoo occupying the nest, how dare you? I was stunned, not only because I was seeing my brother for the first time, but also because I couldn't understand how I was occupying the nest. I was so scared that I called for Mom and Dad. Mom and Dad came upstairs in a hurry, and Justin was the first to attack. Mom and Dad, how did you arrange this? This is Penny's room, aren't you making Penny feel neglected by treating us differently? This. Mom and Dad looked conflicted, not knowing what to say. I keenly caught the flash of anger in my mother's eyes. It was the look she gave me. I paused for a moment, I was very familiar with this kind of look. My dead foster father liked to look at me like this when he was alive. Mom was angry with me. So, I really was a cuckoo. 4. The cuckoo carefully stood on the wire, enduring year after year. Finally, it jumped off the high building. It was so stupid. In this life, I can't be stupid. In this life, I won't compete, I won't cry, I won't make a fuss, and of course, I won't love them anymore. I smiled faintly in my heart, pointing to the smallest room at the very back. I want that one. Mom and Dad were stunned, then revealed relieved expressions, but pretended to blame. That's a storage room, what are you choosing it for? Choose again. I'm used to living in small rooms, they make me feel safer. My tone was tinged with self-deprecation. Mom and Dad sighed and agreed. They just agreed, so readily, to let their own daughter, who had been lost for 10 years and had just returned home, live in the storage room. The fake heiress, Penny, returned at the right time. She ran upstairs and was visibly surprised to see me enter the storage room. I glanced at her, unfazed. She thought I didn't know that she deliberately put a panda doll in her room to lure me into choosing her room. From the first day I returned home, I had fallen into her carefully arranged trap. She spent 3 years competing with me for the love of my family, and finally won completely. And I, through death, realized a truth. The best way to gain love is to love yourself. 5. I moved into the storage room and closed the door. Penny brought the panda doll over. Sister, I'm giving you a doll, you'll definitely like it. I don't like dolls, thank you. I responded through the door, taking out the books I had brought from the countryside. From the moment I was reborn, I had a plan. I wanted to love myself. There are many ways to love yourself. For me now, achieving academic success and being independent is the best way. Sister, don't you like me? That's right, I'm the one occupying the nest. Penny said sadly outside the door. Seemingly talking to me, but actually saying it for my parents to hear. My parents were still there. Sure enough, my mother quickly comforted her. Your sister is probably tired and needs to rest, don't overthink it. My father also said, Penny, don't overthink it, in this family, no one is occupying the nest. Actually, there is. It's me. 6. I took a nap, and the villa was already deserted. The nanny said that the young lady was in a bad mood, and the master and madam had accompanied her shopping. I said, oh, that was good. I started to sort out the red envelopes. These red envelopes were given by my parents and relatives when they picked me up, and they added up to more than 100,000. I want to save them. Because my future days will not be easy, and this 100,000 is my biggest capital. The village chief had helped me open a bank card, so I took the bank card to a nearby bank. In my previous life, I suffered for 3 years, so I was already familiar with the surrounding area and wouldn't get lost when I went out. When I arrived at the bank, a handsome man in a suit walked towards me, with the bank manager following beside him, bowing and scraping to see him off. I stopped. The man in the suit was my brother, Justin. In this life, this was our first meeting. But he recognized me, after all, there were photos and videos of me. He also saw me, looked me up and down, and said coldly, Dawn? I nodded. The bank manager's eyes rolled, and he was extremely enthusiastic to me. What is this young lady to Mr. Liu? Justin frowned, displeased. You don't need to know, go be busy. The bank manager left with a dry laugh. Justin looked at me again. You just came home, what are you doing here? Saving money. I answered truthfully, and went straight to get a number. Saving money? Those red envelopes. Justin revealed a disdainful smile. I thought you would give the red envelopes to Mom and Dad to keep. After all, Penny has always done that. I didn't answer. Justin snorted softly. At such a young age, you're greedy for money, but remember, you can be greedy for your own money, but don't reach for the family's money. He was exactly the same as in my previous life. In the first week I returned home, a gold necklace went missing. Justin was convinced that I stole it. He thought that I lacked upbringing, only had money in my eyes, and was a scourge. I didn't expect that, in this reborn life, before the gold necklace had even gone missing, Justin had already made a conclusion about me. But I don't argue, I don't care. I'll save my money. Justin snorted coldly, raised his foot, and left. 7. In the evening, Mom, Dad, and Penny were all there. They were helping me choose a school. The brochures were full of elite schools. I chose directly. I don't want to go to an elite school, I want to go to Sunny City High. A key public high school. Go to high school, go to college, and leave this home. That was my plan. I didn't want to be a wealthy heiress. Mom and Dad were very surprised, and Penny, hiding her inner joy, said, Sis, we don't need to go to ordinary high schools, we don't even need to take the college entrance exam, we'll be going abroad to study in the future. That's right, Dawn, you and your sister should go to Gold Blossom Academy together, we'll arrange your future. My mother patted the back of my hand. My father's eyes flickered, considering something. I know what he's considering. In my previous life, I went to Gold Blossom Academy and became famous. Not because I was so dazzling, but because I was too out of place. A country girl, studying with the richest young masters and young ladies in Sunny City, seemed extremely incongruous. And after the news that I was the daughter of the Luz spread, it attracted a lot of jokes. Many people came to see me out of curiosity, but when they found out that I was just a dark, thin, wild girl, they couldn't help but criticize me. More importantly, Penny added fuel to the fire, not only finding people to bully me, but also sending a handsome boy to pursue me. After I was immersed in sweet words, the boy publicly released many recordings and videos of me with him. I instantly became the laughingstock of everyone, bringing shame to the Luz. At that time, my father was furious and slapped me to the ground. I knew that letting you go to an elite school would lead to this. You really brought shame to our family. My father valued face extremely, and I had torn his face apart. At this moment, what my father was considering was nothing more than face again. Penny could uphold his face, but what about me? I only like public schools, let me go to Sunny City High. I was very firm. My mother wanted to persuade me, but my father interrupted. All right, let the child choose for herself, since we love her, we shouldn't force her. I almost laughed, but I held back. The laughter that didn't brew in my throat turned into a desolate feeling in my heart, without any emotion. 8. I started going to high school. Sunny City High. This school was the farthest from home, so after 2 weeks of classes, I proposed to live at school. The family, who were eating, were all surprised. Justin, who rarely came home, frowned at me at this moment. Live at school? Dawn, why do I find that you're not close to us at all? You've been back for more than half a month, haven't you adjusted to being home yet? How could I adjust? I suffered for 3 years and still didn't adjust. Living at school is convenient for studying. I gave the reason calmly. Justin narrowed his eyes and didn't speak. My mother took my hand. Dawn, do you have something on your mind? Mom always feels that you don't get along with us. Yeah, we don't get along. So, out of sight, out of mind. It's just to study better. I explained again. Penny's eyes next to me turned red, tears welling up. Sis, you must hate me, right? Don't live at school. I'll live at school, I won't appear in front of you anymore. After she finished speaking, she went to pack her things. I laughed. Penny, you're in a hurry. In the past half a month, she had always tried to find fault, either to anger me, or to slander me. But I didn't compete, I didn't fight, I was like an otter. Penny couldn't do anything to me. Now, she had finally caught an opportunity to retreat in order to advance, and she immediately pretended. As long as you're not stupid, you can see Penny's little thoughts. Mom, Dad, and my brother naturally saw it too, but they didn't care, they favored Penny. Justin put down his chopsticks. Penny, what are you talking about living at school? Sit down. Penny sniffed and sat down obediently. My father seized the opportunity to agree to my request. Since Dawn wants to live at school, then let her live at school. It's not a big deal. Of course, it wasn't a big deal, since I had lived at school in my previous life. To be precise, I lived in a rented apartment next to the school. At that time, because of Penny's repeated fault-finding and slander, I, still immature, couldn't help but fight with her. We fell down the stairs. I wasn't injured, but Penny's head was bleeding. I still thought I had won, but when my family ran over, I realized that I had lost completely. My mother hugged Penny, heartbroken and tearful. My father went berserk, grabbing me and scolding. Dawn, what are you doing? Are you crazy? Justin was also home, and he gave me a kick without saying a word. Do you still think this is the countryside? Who allowed you to fight like a wild dog? Apologize to Penny. 9. The whole family's anger was vented on me. I apologized in terror, while Penny cried and packed her luggage. She said that I didn't like her, that she was going to live outside, and that she would leave this home to her sister. The family naturally didn't want her to leave, and tried to persuade her with heartache. I stood aside, dazed. Justin suddenly scolded me. You made a mistake, don't you know how to show something? I think you should go live outside, this home can only accommodate Penny. I was awakened. No wonder Mom and Dad always looked at me, hesitating to speak. So, they were hoping that I would take the initiative to move out. It was like a head blow, waking up the late-blooming girl. I moved out, forced to leave my family. I lived in that rented apartment for 2 whole years. My thoughts returned, and I went upstairs to pack my things. I'm going out to live early. As you wish. 10. I rented a small apartment next to Sunny City High, not living directly at school. Only a nanny was busy running around. She was puzzled and secretly asked me, Miss, are the master and madam okay with you living here alone? Why aren't they coming? Of course, they wouldn't come. After all, Penny was in a bad mood again, and they were busy comforting Penny. Seeing me silent, the nanny awkwardly comforted me. Maybe they're busy, they'll come to see you when they're done. The nanny was wrong. My parents and brother didn't come to see me at all. My mother only gave me a call. Dawn, have you settled down? Alas, Mom is really worried about you living outside alone. I said I had settled down. My mother sighed a few more times, but couldn't say anything. You see, without 7 parts of love, how can there be 3 parts of words? Hanging up the phone, looking at this little nest that belonged to me, I revealed a heartfelt smile. I finally didn't have to be a cuckoo. The following days were much simpler. Eating, sleeping, studying, 3 points and 1 line, without having to consider any family matters. They didn't consider me either. More than a month after I moved out, I didn't receive a single phone call. It was as if everyone had died. Later, I met Penny. On the way home to the apartment after school, I saw her riding a motorcycle, leading a large group of people, swaggering through the streets, full of wail. This made me a little stunned. Penny was the heiress of the group. She shouldn't be riding a motorcycle on the street like a hoodlum. If my parents found out about this, they would definitely scold her. She seemed to have found me too, and revved the engine, stopping in front of me. Before I could speak, she took off her helmet and sized me up playfully. Dawn, long time no see. I nodded. She flicked her hair, crossed her arms in a cool way, and asked me a question. Mom and Dad haven't given you a single call, have they? I nodded. She asked me again if I wanted to know the reason. I shook my head. She said to herself, actually, they wanted to call you, but as soon as they called, I would cry. To take care of me, they had no choice but to not call. Of course, the most important reason is that they have resentment towards you. I listened silently. Penny held back her laughter. You've been home for quite a while, but you're not close to Mom and Dad and your brother at all. Don't you think they resent you? I didn't expect to win without a fight. I was very afraid of you at first, afraid that when you came back, I wouldn't have a place. But what happened? You left home yourself, handing everything over. Thank you so much. As she spoke, she carefully observed my expression. She was testing my tone, wanting to see if I was naturally stupid or voluntarily giving way. I wanted to laugh. Sister, aren't you tired? I have something to do, I'll go first. I raised my satchel and walked towards the apartment. A motorcycle guy came closer, asking Penny, who is she? Who else could she be? The precious daughter of my cheap parents. Penny didn't care at all. The motorcycle guy hissed, don't slander President Liu and Madame Liu like that. TCH. Penny turned around and left. Obviously, she didn't respect her parents, and didn't even love them. I smiled. Mom and Dad, you're the most pitiful ones. 11. During the summer vacation of my first year of high school, I went home. But it was deserted. The nanny who was cleaning the swimming pool told me that my parents and family had gone to the beach for vacation. They had left yesterday. Didn't the master and madam notify you? The nanny was still puzzled why I didn't know. I didn't answer, I just left. On the way, my mother sent me a WeChat message. Dawn, we're preparing to go to the beach for vacation, at least for half a month. Your naughty sister has been nagging about it for a long time. Do you want to come along? Looking at this message, I only felt it was absurd. They were probably already at the beach, and they were only sending me a message now? I thought about it and deliberately replied, I'm going. It was silent for a long time before there was any movement. Dawn, then come home within half an hour. Your dad, that fool, set the wrong time for the plane tickets. We have to leave quickly. Half an hour? The villa was in the east of the city, and Sunny City High was in the west of the city. It would take nearly an hour by taxi. My mother was really smart, defusing my attack. I can't make it back, you guys go. I was smiling. What am I smiling at? I don't know. 12. I didn't slack off on studying during the summer vacation. For the sake of the future college entrance examination, I prepared in advance and hired a tutor. I spent almost the entire summer studying. When I was tired from studying, I would look at my phone and browse my friends' circle. From time to time, the dynamics of my family members would pop up in the friends' circle. Like my mother. She would post 9 photos, one of which was a group photo of her and my father, one was the back of my brother, and the other 7 were all Penny. Penny surfing, Penny sitting in a helicopter, Penny sitting on a jet ski, Penny sitting on a yacht. So fashionable, so beautiful. Unlike me, a bookworm wrapped in a plain school uniform. Of course, I wasn't jealous. I wouldn't be like in my previous life, when I was deliberately left at home, carefully calling to ask if they had forgotten about me. Now, I would just give a like. Whoever posted in the friend circle, I would give a like. Bless you, happiness and well-being. 13. After the start of school, I continued to study in an orderly manner. My grades also steadily improved from the middle to the top 10 in the grade. In middle school, students with good grades always received more attention. I actually received a love letter. A boy praised me for my good grades, beautiful face, and white skin. I was stunned for a long time, with a blank expression. Was this for me? I'm beautiful? I'm white? I asked my deskmate, do you think I'm white? My deskmate rolled her eyes, stop showing off. I know you're white. Ah? I borrowed her makeup mirror and looked at myself for the first time in many days. I was actually quite white. No longer dark and thin, looking malnourished. My facial features also seemed to have developed a lot, adding a bit of handsomeness. Well, a little bit good-looking. Was it because I loved myself that my appearance had changed for the better? For some reason, my eyes were a little red. My deskmate was shocked. Damn, did you cry because you're so beautiful? 14. My grades were improving day by day. My appearance was also changing day by day. I didn't pay too much attention, because with age, my desire for independence became stronger and stronger. Especially after my third year of high school, I always fantasized that I was a strong woman, owning my own business, able to stand on the top of the mountain, attracting everyone's attention. How ridiculous my previous life was. A whole 3 years, completely wasted on seeking love. I was seeking love from my family. I wanted my mom, my dad, and my brother to love me. However, on my 18th birthday, I jumped off the high building, ending my life. 18 is a special day. I knew that something big would happen today. Sure enough, early in the morning, my mother called me. This was the first phone call in half a year. The last time she called was on New Year's Eve, asking me to come back for a reunion dinner. I didn't go back, I made dumplings at my apartment. I answered the phone, and my mother's smiling voice came, "Good girl, long time no see, Mom was always afraid of disturbing your studies, so I didn't dare to look for you." I nodded softly, indicating my understanding. My mother said the main thing, "It's like this, we're preparing to send Penny abroad to study, do you have any ideas? Do you want to go abroad?" This sentence stirred up my thoughts, stirring them to the day when blood dyed the setting sun. That day, my mother also asked me if I wanted to go abroad. I answered, yes. After 3 years of suffering, my heart was no longer human or ghost. I was humble and cowardly, dim and dull, but I bit Penny tightly. I was not convinced. Why did the whole family love her? Why was I the cuckoo? I was clearly their own daughter, I was the apple of this family's eye. So, Penny was going abroad to study, and I was also going abroad to study, I wouldn't fall behind. I clearly remembered the slight change in my mother's face at the time. Just like the day I returned home, when I chose Penny's room. 15. My subconscious had already told me that my mother wasn't really asking for my opinion, she was just going through the motions. She didn't plan to send me abroad to study. But I was already dizzy. I would just bite Penny tightly. My mother touched my head. "Dawn, let me tell you in advance, studying abroad is not an easy thing, there are a lot of bad people, and your English is very poor, you haven't studied hard in these years." I couldn't get a shred of love, how could I study with peace of mind? I didn't refute, I just said that I wanted to study abroad, my family wasn't short of money, send me there. Penny was secretly laughing beside me. My father lit a cigar and said in a deep voice, "This isn't a matter of money, sending you abroad would require another trip through the process, and we'd have to worry about you every day, it's quite troublesome." He was afraid of trouble. I said that I would take good care of myself and wouldn't trouble my family. My father snorted impatiently, "What do you know? If something happened to you abroad, who would take care of you? Everyone is so busy, use your brain more." My tears came out, because my family's dislike was already blatant. But I still had to question. I questioned loudly, "Since everyone is so busy, aren't you afraid that something will happen to Penny abroad, with no one to take care of her?" "You." My father's face darkened, and he broke the cigar in anger. My mother slapped my mouth, "Spit, spit, spit, don't say unlucky things, nothing will happen to your sister." Just then, Justin came back. He heard that Penny was going abroad, and was very reluctant, so he flew back directly from the capital. Penny immediately rushed over, feeling very wronged. "Brother, Dawn is cursing that something will happen to me abroad." After 3 years of fighting, she had achieved a complete victory, and didn't pretend anymore, directly targeting me. Justin's face was unusually gloomy. Without asking the reason, he came over and slapped me. "Dawn, do you want to die?" 16. I was slapped and my mouth was bleeding, and the fragility and humbleness in my heart shattered instantly. I cried loudly, tears streaming down my face. I was like a sloppy beggar, scratching my hair madly, making repressed, tragic wails. "Why did you hit me? You were the ones who asked me if I wanted to go abroad, you were the ones who asked. You don't love me at all, you've never loved me, you can't wait for me to die. Would you only be satisfied if I died?" Everyone was shocked, and then embarrassed and angry. My mother also put away her hypocrisy and scolded sternly, "Dawn, what are you doing? Do you still want to save face?" My father told the nannies to go down, and then ordered me, "Shut up, you're the daughter of the loose, not a shrew." My brother sneered, not saying a word. My lips trembled violently, my fingers were also trembling, and finally my whole body was trembling. For 3 years, I didn't know what I was living for. My mind was blank, I could only mechanically cry, questioning, would you only be satisfied if I died? Yes, go die. My brother roared, extremely disgusted with me. Mom and Dad all waved their hands irritably, get out. I wasn't trembling anymore, and it seemed like my heart wasn't beating anymore either. I was muddled, yet full of power. I turned around and rushed upstairs. I rushed to the 5th floor in one breath. No one stopped me, no one worried. I rushed to the roof and ran towards the edge. After climbing over the railing, a nanny exclaimed from below, Miss, don't be impulsive. Everyone in the villa ran out to watch me. My parents and brother also came out. Penny was still secretly smiling, ecstatically smiling. I stood facing the wind, my body feeling both cold and hot. Jump? When will you ever learn to be sensible? You're 18 years old. My mother cursed loudly, feeling that I was too embarrassing. There were so many servants present, watching the Liu family's daughter acting crazy. How embarrassing. My father was so angry that he couldn't speak. He just waved his hand fiercely, signaling me to jump. If you have the guts, then jump. My brother stopped me. He held Penny and said coldly, don't jump here, you'll dirty the floor. I smiled miserably. I'm sorry, I dirtied your floor. I closed my eyes and jumped. 17. I became a dead person. My legs were shattered, my brain splattered, and I didn't have a breath left in me. My soul floated, and I actually felt relieved. I glared fiercely at my pile of rotten flesh and my family. If I could speak, I would definitely shout, look, I'm dead, are you satisfied? I fantasized that my family finally regretted it, finally understood that they should have loved me. However, they didn't. My father drove away all the servants, then shook his head coldly and cursed, childish. My mother trembled a little, but didn't shed a single tear. She just pursed her lips and sighed deeply, silly child, so silly. But while sighing, she also felt relieved. She had finally gotten rid of me, this burden. My brother stood in front of Penny, frowned and called, contacting someone to move the body, and cremate and bury it as soon as possible. The only one who cried was Penny. She was badly frightened, shivering, but her eyes were clearly full of triumph. She was completely carefree now. She was the only Liu family daughter now. My family all comforted her, saying that it wasn't her fault, that I brought it on myself. I was stunned for a long time, and gradually dissipated. Dawn, you're so stupid. 18. The excruciating pain from the time of death still seemed to be tormenting me, causing me to shiver. My thoughts returned, and my mother on the other end of the phone asked, good girl, why aren't you talking? Mom is asking you, do you want to study abroad? No. I answered briefly, I still have class, I'll hang up now. Oh, sigh, you really don't want to trouble us at all. Good girl, Mom actually loves you very much, and hopes that you can go abroad for further studies. My mother spoke earnestly. I hung up the phone. Continue studying. 19. After Penny went abroad, my college entrance examination was also approaching. For many wealthy children, the college entrance examination was just a small hurdle. You don't even have to cross it. But for me, it was the most important watershed in my life. With the attitude of being the first in the grade, I rushed to the highest institution in the country. I had full confidence. The moment I walked out of the examination room, I burst into tears. My deskmate rolled her eyes, what are you crying about? Looking in the mirror again? I returned to the apartment and looked in the mirror. This was recently bought. I didn't have the habit of looking in the mirror before, not to mention a full-length mirror. I didn't even have a small makeup mirror. I relied on the wash basin to see myself. Now, I quietly admired myself. Not because I was more beautiful, nor because I was whiter. I just purely admired that in this life, I had at least lived out a life. There was still some money in my bank card, and I rewarded myself with a trip to see the sea. This was the first time I had traveled far in 3 years. I took 2 photos. One was of the sea, and one was a selfie. Then, I posted in my friend's circle for the first time. I didn't know what to write, so I simply sent an expression, a grinning expression. My mother was the first to like it. She was very shocked. Dawn, is this you? I replied with an yes. My mother asked again, is it really you? You've changed so much? Yes, so much that even my own mother couldn't recognize me. My father didn't like it. He sent me a WeChat message. Where did you go? I said I went to see the sea. My father was silent for a moment, then blamed me. You're really something. You didn't want to go see the sea before, but now you go alone. It's not safe. I didn't reply. In the evening, my brother also liked me, praising, graceful and beautiful, worthy of our Liu family's genes. I ignored him. 20. Before the college entrance examination results came out, I ran off to work. I worked for half a month before my mother found out my whereabouts by asking the teacher. She couldn't help but blame me. Good girl, why do you always run around without saying a word? If something happens, we wouldn't even know. Come back quickly, you don't need to go to work. I said it would be good to earn some tuition, there are many places to spend money in college. My mother laughed in anger. Is our family short of that little tuition? Of course, we are. In the 3 years of high school, I never asked my family for money, and you never gave it voluntarily. The red envelopes from when I returned home supported me for 3 years. I smiled without saying a word. My mother belatedly realized something, and hurriedly asked, Your father didn't give you living expenses? No. What about your brother? No either. After saying that, I hung up the phone. I'm too busy, the assembly line can't do without me. 21. On the day the results came out, the whole school celebrated. Because I got my wish and was admitted to Peking University. Moreover, I was also the city's top scorer, and was interviewed by the city TV station. The class teacher cried with excitement, praising me as a genius. I smiled quietly. Then I couldn't smile anymore, because my parents came. The teacher invited them to come, to take pictures together. My mother was very excited, smiling from ear to ear. My father also rarely wasn't stern, shaking hands with many leaders, talking eloquently. It seemed that the title of city's top scorer was still loud enough, and the rich also liked it. I turned around and left, not wanting to take pictures with them. Walking out of the school gate, a handsome man got out of a sports car. My brother Justin. The two looked at each other. He paused. Didn't Mom and Dad say they were coming to find you? Where are you going alone? I'm hungry, I'm going to eat. I continued walking, towards the small restaurant not far away. The mapo tofu inside was 12 yuan, and the green pepper fried pork was 13 yuan, my favorite things to eat. Usually, I would order one each day, to eat with rice. Today, I splurged, ordered both, and ate them. Justin walked in, choked and coughed incessantly, and had to cover his mouth and nose and sit next to me. You eat this? He was a little shocked. I nodded, saying it was delicious. Justin frowned tightly, speechless for a moment. Then he sighed. Penny lives a much better life than you, she gets more than 200,000 living expenses every month abroad, I heard she's partying every day, sigh. I continued to shovel tofu. Seeing that I didn't say anything, Justin suddenly took out a card and handed it to me. You're the city's top scorer, very amazing, I, as your brother, will reward you with 100,000, you can use it for college. He was so generous, rewarding me with half a month of Penny's living expenses. I didn't take it. He put the card on the table, looked at me for a long time, and walked away silently. 22. I took Justin's card back to the villa and put it in the living room. Then I packed my last luggage, preparing to go north. Going to the capital, the sky is high and the sea is wide. When I went out, my parents came back. Their faces were not good, and after seeing me, they suppressed their anger and questioned, Dawn, why didn't you stay and take pictures with us? The school leaders looked for you for a long time and couldn't find you, don't we want face? I didn't know I had to take pictures. I explained and walked out. My father took a deep breath, staring at me closely. My mother suddenly grabbed my hand, her eyes wet. Dawn, do you hate us? For 3 years, you've never smiled at us, and now that you've been admitted to Peking University, you don't share your joy with us, we are your biological parents. Biological parents? I stopped and looked at her indifferently. Like looking at a stranger. Many past events flowed, and finally turned into calm well water. Not a ripple could be stirred. I responded, you misunderstood, I'm just born not to like smiling. Ridiculous. My father was furious, taking out the dignity of the head of the family. Dawn, from the first day you came home, your mind hasn't been on us. We waited for 10 years to get you back, and we hope to be close to you. But you always have a cold face, you don't get along with Penny, do we owe you? Yes. You owe me. A ripple finally arose in my heart, like a drop of water, rippling waves. The waves became bigger and bigger, and finally set off a monstrous wave. I stared at the furious father, staring at the grieving mother. I asked them, if I had chosen Penny's room on the day I returned home, would you have agreed? They paused, then immediately nodded, of course, you can live wherever you want. Then you call Penny now and tell her that I want to live in her room. I put down my luggage. Mom and Dad froze, their eyes flickering, it's early morning in America. Penny might be sleeping. Good reason. I continued to ask, then if you were going to the beach for vacation, and I asked you to wait for me, would you be willing to wait? Of course, Mom didn't say she was waiting for you at the time. Your dad bought the wrong plane tickets, it made me so angry. My mother interrupted. I smiled softly, that day, I came back, and you had left the day before. My mother's face changed drastically, and her throat seemed to be strangled. I continued to ask, on my 18th birthday, if I insisted on going abroad, could I be like Penny, with 200,000 pocket money every month, living freely abroad? Yes. My father answered firmly. That's good, I can go abroad now, please help me go through the procedures, and by the way, notify Penny, let her pick me up. My eyes were deep. My father froze again, murmuring, I'm afraid it's not appropriate, why don't we discuss it with Penny first? After she wakes up. I laughed. I picked up my luggage and waved my hand. Goodbye. No one came after me. Only two ashamed people anxiously watched me leave. 23. After entering Peking University, I became more and more diligent. Because I wanted to be a strong woman standing on the top of the mountain, not a true heiress seeking death. In my second year, Justin came to the capital to meet customers, and also came to see me. He complained as soon as he met. Penny is really going against the heavens, abroad, sigh, she's gone crazy. I asked what was wrong. He hesitated for a long time before gritting his teeth and saying that Penny wasn't learning well, and had learned all the dregs of foreign countries. Everything from gambling to drugs, she didn't miss a single one. Our parents had already gone to catch her personally and must bring her back to China. I smiled and didn't say anything. In the winter of my second year, near the new year, my parents brought Penny back. Penny was completely bad. She was originally bad, but she would only pretend at home. After going abroad, she was unconstrained, and had endless money to spend, so naturally she ran wild, unrestrained and unruly. After she came back, she still didn't repent, playing day and night, and even had fierce conflicts with her parents. My mother suddenly made a video call to me one late night, and I got up to pee and answered it. On the other end of the video, my mother had disheveled hair, swollen cheeks, and eyes full of despair and fatigue. I asked what was wrong. She immediately cried, your sister went out to fool around in the middle of the night, with 7 or 8 men, it's simply unbearable to look at. I brought her back, and she actually hit me, look at my face. Her face was swollen very comically. I was silent. My mother wiped away her tears, filled with grief, your father is on a business trip, and your brother is at the company again. I can't hold your sister down alone. Heaven is really creating evil. I shouldn't have indulged your sister in the first place. I only thought she was naturally mischievous, but I didn't expect her to be selfish and stubborn. My mother had a lot of bitterness to tell. But I was very sleepy, and fell asleep while listening. Vaguely, I only heard my mother's cries and stammering apologies. Dawn, are you asleep? Mom wanted to say, Mom is sorry for you. I turned over and hung up the video. So noisy. 24. While Penny was turning the house upside down, I was already advancing rapidly in the highest institution in the country. I became the tutor's favorite student, I became famous in various journals, and I spoke eloquently at academic conferences. By the time I was in my senior year, I was already a rising star that everyone was watching. My parents and brother had actually been paying attention to me all along, often inquiring about my news, and always sending messages praising me for being amazing, and the pride of the Liu family. I never replied. It was also this year that my father fell ill, saying that he was so angry that he vomited blood all over the floor. My mother and brother repeatedly begged me to go back and see him, saying that my father wanted to see me. I happened to be on vacation and planned to go see the sea. When I passed by my hometown, I went back to take a look. But when I entered the villa, my mother didn't talk about my father, but eagerly pulled me towards the 3rd floor. I asked what was wrong? She didn't answer, she pulled me to the 3rd floor, pointed to the largest and widest room, and said with a smile, good girl, look, this room has been renovated, everything has been changed, do you like it? The inside was indeed brand new, and even the panda was gone. I didn't want to look at it, and asked my mother instead, Penny doesn't live here anymore? Mentioning Penny, my mother's face darkened, her eyes full of gloom. What does she live in? She's not my own daughter, is she worthy? My mother's words surprised me a little, but my mind wasn't here. I just said, oh, and said that I was just passing by to take a look and was leaving. My mother was anxious and tightened her grip on my hand. What are you doing in such a hurry? You haven't seen your father yet. Your father wasn't just sick, he was beaten. I raised my eyebrows, who dares to beat him? Penny. My mother gnashed her teeth, that beastly thing, colluding with our competitors, tried to steal confidential documents, and was discovered by your father. She was shameless enough to beat your father on the spot, stabbing him in the shoulder with a fruit knife. Playing it so big? I was laughing in my heart, but verbally asked, then did you call the police? Penny has to go to jail, right? My mother shook her head, we want to handle this matter ourselves. Anyway, we don't recognize Penny, this beast. Is that so? Then you handle it. Seeing that it was getting late, I immediately said goodbye. My mother chased me all the way out, begging me to stay for dinner, and that my brother would bring my father home from the hospital later. As soon as she said this, my father and Justin really came home. My father was still wrapped in bandages, his face pale. Justin looked angry, as if he would kill someone at any moment. Seeing me, both of them smiled at the same time. My father took the initiative to say hello. Dawn, you're back? I wasn't supposed to be discharged yet, but I was discharged early to see you. I nodded slightly, without saying anything. Justin shook hands with me, opening his mouth to praise. Miss Dawn, you are a celebrity at Peking University, your future is unlimited, welcome to visit our humble abode. He thought he was very humorous. I was a little dazed, so the cold and arrogant Justin also had this side? In my past and present lives, after so many years, I was seeing it for the first time. Seeing me silent, Justin was a little awkward and embarrassed. My mother smoothed things over. It's rare for the family to be reunited, come in and eat. They surrounded me and entered the house. I looked at the time again and shook my head in refusal. No, I'm afraid I won't make it to see the sunset. 25. I still left. After seeing the sea, I returned to Peking University. Now that I was in my senior year, I had partnered with a few friends to start a business. This road wasn't easy, but it was very meaningful. When I was in my second year of graduate school, my career finally had a good harvest, and I earned my first pot of gold in life, 800,000. Life also became more and more busy. With both academics and career going hand in hand, I often fell asleep as soon as my head hit the pillow, and never paid attention to the news from home again. When I graduated from graduate school, I and a few old partners also established a company, and had our own face. The money I earned wasn't much, and naturally couldn't compare to my wealthy parents. But the advantage was that I was independent and had a full sense of accomplishment. It was also at this time that I saw Penny. She actually came to me alone. As soon as she saw me, she slapped me. Fortunately, I reacted in time to block it, otherwise my face would have been swollen. Without any nonsense, I also slapped her back. She couldn't dodge in time and was seeing stars from my slap, and the corners of her mouth were full of blood. She spat and cursed me viciously. The whole family doesn't want me anymore, are you satisfied? I took out a tissue to wipe my hands and didn't answer. She gritted her teeth. Dawn, you won. I never thought that your act of taking the initiative to stay away from your family was a big game. You retreated in order to advance, what a ruthless method. Have you been watching too many gangster movies? I raised my eyes and said helplessly, is there a possibility that I stayed away from my family just for myself? You're talking nonsense. Penny's eyes were about to split. My parents broke off relations with me, and my brother even beat me in the street. It's all because of you. They love you, they don't love me anymore. I shook my head and called the police. The police took Penny away. After taking my statement, I notified my mother. When she received my call, her voice trembled with excitement. Dawn, you finally called me. You haven't been home for so many years, are you doing well? I heard that you started a company, are you tired? I interrupted her, come pick up your daughter, she's at the Chaoyang police station. What? I said a few simple words and was about to hang up the phone, but my mother immediately cried, Dawn, you are my daughter, Penny has been driven away by us, I don't want to pick her up, I want to pick you up, can I? I can't. I'm busy. No. 26. After I was named one of the top 10 outstanding young entrepreneurs in the capital, the end of the year was approaching again. I stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows of the president's office, took off my high heels, picked up a glass of red wine, and quietly sipped the wine while admiring the prosperous night view outside the window. At this time, I was 30 years old. From 15 to 30, I had walked for 15 years. This road was really not easy. Jumping off a building was easy, it only took 3 years. And to go from a true heiress seeking death to a strong woman standing on the top of the mountain, it took 12 more years. I was very glad that I had walked these 12 years. In 12 years, many things had changed. For example, the leading enterprise in Sunny City had fallen, which was my parents' enterprise. When the tree falls, the monkeys scatter, and their end was not good. It was said that even the villa was mortgaged. Penny went to jail because after losing her source of income, she started doing bad things, and even caused a death. She was sentenced to 20 years. As for Justin, in order to make a comeback, he came to the capital and used his last money to start a new company. At this moment, he was waiting outside for me to see him. From morning to night. The secretary knocked gently on the door. President Liu, that gentleman still refuses to leave. I nodded, put down the red wine, put on my high heels, and walked out. The down-and-out Justin hurriedly got up with a flattering smile, his eyes full of sadness. The once handsome and spirited him seemed to be 20 years older, at a loss, no longer spirited. When we met, he didn't call me Dawn anymore, but called me President Liu. I asked the secretary to pour him a glass of water, and said with a smile, Mr. Justin, I've read your cooperation plan, I'm very sorry, it doesn't meet my expectations. Justin chuckled dryly, his chapped lips moved twice, but he couldn't say a word for a long time. I got up, I have to go, it's pretty late. Justin got up to see me off, and suddenly said, Sister, Mom and Dad miss you very much, can you go back and see them? They talk about you every day. I paused, and before I could respond, Justin sniffed and said with a sob, You've become so strange, we are family after all, can you not be so ruthless? I turned around and stared at him, and remembered the scene in my previous life when he dragged me out of Penny's room and humiliated me fiercely. When I was 15 years old, I didn't beg you not to be so ruthless, so now, you shouldn't beg me not to be so ruthless. I gave my answer. Justin froze, his head drooped, no longer energetic. And I, walking in high heels, humming softly in the lazy night, walked towards my expectant future. The pile of rotten flesh lying in the bloody filth finally didn't have to seek anyone's love. She mustered up her strength, stood up, smiled, and very proudly, loved herself.